Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local.
So let's move on to Apple and Siri and Spotlight. Mike, but before you jump into that, do you want to say anything about Buy Now, Pay Later, Apple Pay Later? That was a kind of that was maybe in a way that was the thing that kind of got the most attention out of like the 100 million software announcements.
I mean, it's a hot fintech thing right now, obviously, and in many situations, unfortunately, it's a consumer abuse sort of thing. You know, Apple's in a unique position to offer it. They're so much cash that they can finance it themselves. One, and two, they know so much about their users because they have 825 million subscriptions at this point. They have 825 million credit and debit cards. They understand who buys what, when, where, and how. So they are actually, and what was interesting was just there were 4 payments, and I read that if they don't get paid, they're just going to write it off and no longer give that person credit, but they aren't even going to report it to a credit bureau, which I thought was interesting. And it points out the conflict between credit and reputation that Apple sees, that they don't want to be the person to ruin your credit. They don't want to be held accountable to that. So but they get 25% down and then 3 equal payments over your next 3 paychecks, 0 interest fee to that's coming from the business. So they're obviously using the profit that's being extracted from consumers as their opportunity, which I think is interesting, and are able to live on the much smaller margins that are just going to come from the vendor because they have so much cash. So it's interesting. I mean, I've thought about doing it. David thought about using it too, although in not such a nice way, I might say, David.
I was gonna buy a certain product that was right up to the line before they shut off my Apple subscriptions, and you talked me out of it, though, Mike. You talked me out.
Okay.
All right. So now,
so it was interesting to me, but
well, But go ahead. Well, what's interesting is that it used to be the case that Google would announce some product that was competitive with pre-existing products in the market, and they would say, "Oh, these other third-party products are dead now because Google has introduced their version of it." And in 9 out of 10 cases, Google didn't kill anything, because either their product was substandard or they didn't market it, so they didn't get a lot of adoption, or whatever it was.
And likewise here, 50% of the US market, 30% of the world market uses Apple. Only some percentage of those are interested in or have a credit card on file with Apple. And only some percentage of those are interested in this particular aspect of financing. So it's basically serving their base. This is not going to impact poor people, for example, who rely on Buy Now, Pay Later, unfortunately, to make ends meet.
I do think this will force a shift, though, in the Buy Now, Pay Later, Affirm and Klarna and all these other companies, which in some cases have been trying to expand out into sort of e-commerce, becoming e-commerce sites as well as, this financing vehicle. Because Apple is so, the genius here is that it's just whoever takes Apple Wallet, this will automatically be in place. There's no new deals that they have to do. And
right. Although I tried to do cash pay or direct pay, and because my 2 local banks are not Apple Wallet compatible, I can't use Apple Pay to send money to my kids, which is unfortunate because I don't trust Venmo as far as I can throw my phone, which I wouldn't do anyway. So that's how much I don't trust Venmo at all, and I would much rather be on Apple Pay to just transfer money. I mean, I used Venmo and looked at. Somebody sent me Venmo the other day, and I went in and I looked, and I could see all the money they'd paid to their daughter.
Well,
their wife,
that's because Venmo
and I'm thinking,
wants to be a social network as much as it wants to be a payment vehicle.
A social network with your expenditures, which to me is a totally inappropriate place to be sharing that. So, anyways, but I'm not here to talk about.
Let's talk about.
I'm here to talk about.
Let's talk about Spotlight. Okay.
So Spotlight's interesting. We speculated about last week and whether the rumors of an Apple search engine are true. And my contention largely then and has been that Apple has had a search engine that they've slowly, incrementally been building. And we see more of that slow incremental building that relies a great deal on sort of advanced AI and increased processor power, so that their features of search are going up simultaneously with their microprocessor advances, which is interesting to me because they control both the whole stack. But the improved interface to Spotlight and the improved capability. So first, the interface. So Spotlight, which is their primary access to the search engine, although there are others, the Safari URL bar and Siri. But Spotlight is now going to be integrated right on the homepage, front and center. So unlike Yip, which is going to have trouble developing consumer interest, Apple's putting this on the front of every home screen, right above the menu, right above the taskbar at the bottom, below the apps. So every consumer is going to see this, and it says search, and it's quite obvious what you do with it. So consumer uptake is going to be very fast, I think, and very quick. Unlike now, where you have to swipe over to get to the interface.
I can't even find it now, so
swipe
it will
left.
definitely increase my use
Swipe
by
left.
default.
Swipe left, right? But you have to know to swipe left, and that has to be part of your behavior. This is going to be totally integrated. So they've got that side nailed, and then they're using this AI to do things like understand the text in videos and images, and this Spotlight will search whatever word you put in. If it relates to text in your images, in photos or notes, it'll surface all of that information for you. So it's still using this sort of federated approach of internal and external sources. Also, they've been improving Siri's knowledge graph. Siri is thought of as a voice interface, but it really is a voice interface integrated to a knowledge graph. And the knowledge graph is now going to be better integrated into Spotlight, which has also been a problem because Siri's been on one side and Spotlight's been on the other. But things like flight plans and arrival times for flights and information from your reminders are now going to all be integrated through Siri into Spotlight. So that's a big move, integrating the two search engines into one. And they've also noted that they're going to be integrating and being able to access live sports events, which I think is a huge consumer attraction, at least to some of us. I'm not pointing any fingers at the moment. Oh, David raised his hand. And so that's interesting. And then finally, they noted that they will be delivering rich results when searching for businesses and sports leagues and teams, which I don't care about, but David does. So this is the search engine. This is what they're going to deliver to us, which is and becomes more visible, more powerful, and incrementally more available as the hardware gets more sophisticated. Even and as we noticed, less than 1 year to the next, they've improved their processor speed by 30%. So we're seeing massive gains in hardware on the phone level, which gives them all kinds of potential to do interesting stuff with search as just not as a destination, but as a feature of a phone or whatever. So I'm excited about it. I think this is it.
So they've got an index. Clearly, they have a search index. They have a crawler.
Excuse me.
They have a crawler that's been crawling for a number of years, and some of that data makes its way into these federated results. But most of web search is still reliant upon whoever your default Safari URL bar default search engine is, right? So they prompt you to go to do a web search if you're not seeing what you want there. And then that's going to be Google in my case, or Bing, or DuckDuckGo for somebody else.
But to think that they're not preparing for the end of Google is to not understand that Apple works on a 10-year horizon all the time. And clearly, if we can see that Google-Apple relationship at risk, Apple clearly sees that, either through antitrust or some other reason. Google decides not to, whatever. I'm sure they see that as a vulnerability, and I'm sure they're planning for it. I don't doubt that one iota.
Probably so. And then the question will be, and this is cart long before the horse, will they ever try and monetize search? Will they ever put ads in there? I mean, they're making more money now with search ads in the App Store. And it's I don't know what the number is, but it's in the billions now, I think. And it's a growing category.
Right there, though, there was a demand because, firstly, their search engine in the App Store is not that good, right? Which doesn't bode well for search engines in general, but they do, they are working on it. And there's a business side demand there, which doesn't exist on the phone, right? They typically, and
It probably will pretty soon, though. If this gets major consumer adoption, I bet you're going to want to, advertisers are want to.
Well, and it'll be seen, again, we don't have any numbers. I mean, Andrew Shotland argued on Twitter that there was a meaningful volume of search queries coming through Apple.
Well, it's I see it when I look at restaurants and spas and hotels. I see a ton of dark Apple traffic, right? I don't see it as much in traditional bricks and mortar and service area things, but I see a ton of it in those kinds of areas, which are very tourism and travel related, as well as recreation.
And is that maps?
Bars,
is that maps?
You can't tell because Google, there's no way to put a tracking with most of these links. There's no way to put tracking URLs in, so you can't tell where it's coming from. So it's dark traffic, but
well,
some people say you can put a tracking URL through, like Moment Feed might allow it, and then it might get through to Apple. And if it does, you might be able to track some of this. But it's coming in and it's dark. It's not saying it's from Google.
But as David says, if we start to see some meaningful growth in search query volume or traffic coming from Apple, then there will be demand from marketers who see it as a less competitive opportunity. It's like a new opportunity, right? But that all relies on, I mean, if to the extent that Apple builds more advertising opportunities on its own products, it makes itself more vulnerable to criticism that it levels against Google and others.
Right. There was some noise early this year that they were going to release analytics data, traffic data to partners via like a not an API, but via like a CVS download or to partners like Moment Feed. I don't know if they did that. I'm just using Moment Feed as an example. I don't know if it was them, but I heard through several sources that Apple was going to be releasing some amount of traffic data. So that information may be forthcoming.
And Moment Feed, of course, is now part of Uberall, as you remember.
Yeah, so maybe you could check and see.
They don't talk to me anymore.
Oh shucks.
No, I don't know what's going on internally at Uberall anymore. That channel is closed.
So I have to be in full disclosure. I do own Apple stock. It's been very, very good to me. So I'm continuing to bet on Spotlight and Apple.
There's a minor financial interest in the depth of Mike's fanboyism. So
yes, I do not own any Apple stock in the interest of equal
nor do I, though, mostly because I sold some years ago and it's too expensive to get back in now. So
it's a year low, I think, 142 or something.
All right. Well, so with those stock tips here, we're maybe we should just go into stock picking and stock tips instead of internet analysis.
I think our follower count would shrink by 90% if we did that.
All right. Any final words on any of the developments this week before we adjourn? Sign off for another week? Nope.
Just we didn't talk about this time, but it looks like some of the Google Marketing Live announcements around automated ads are now in the wild. A couple reports on that this week. So if you do paid search, I would have my sort of spidey sense tingling at this point.
I mean, and that's a very interesting topic that we've touched on a number of times in the past, and we'll undoubtedly come back to, is the automated creative and automated, ad assembly that they're moving toward, essentially, or are now not moving toward. They're in the middle of it. All right. Thank you very much for listening this week. Subscribe to nearmedia.co, and we'll see you again next week for episode 69.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.